Hey, welcome back to the Club Junkie podcast. Hopefully you're having a great week. It is Thursday morning as usual. Thursday of the Players, that's starting up right now, which is pretty awesome. Always fun to kind of watch Sawgrass. It's just a kind of a fun thing. And, the fifth major, as they call it, is always exciting. And hopefully we'll have a good one this week. I know the weather maybe on the weekend might get a little damp, but I think they should be okay. But before we get into today's episode, just want to let you know that it's brought to you by Titleist and the Vokey Design SM10 wedges. The Vokey design team is always grinding and always coming up with ways to make each new release better than the last. With the new SM10 wedges, they have done it again, thanks in no small part to the tremendous input they get from the countless tour pros who play Vokey wedges. Better players make better wedges. The feedback the tour pros give directly leads to the improved performance you'll experience. One example is the CG in the lower lofts of the SM10 shifting up to help full shots hold their line better. Think fewer poles, more pins. SM10s produce the piercing low flight tour pros love from a wedge, but any player can benefit from the added control of lower flight. Get better wedges and become a better player with Vokey Design SM10 wedges. Go to Vokey.com to sharpen your short game with SM10 and to find a fitter near you. So, yeah, we're back another Thursday. I've been hitting some balls, and that was been a great one. But we also, the big, I think, news that, at least the GolfWRX side is we have the best driver list out. So pretty exciting. It's a big thing every year. I know every site kind of does a best driver thing. And the way we do it is we basically poll like 200 fitters from around the country into Canada, Europe. We kind of poll everybody and we kind of survey them, talk to these fitters, all that, in order to get a list. And I know there's kind of a problem with everybody's list, and I'll be 100% upfront that we don't think this list is absolutely perfect, and we don't think anybody's is, to be honest. The only list that's perfect in terms of best driver or best any club is the one that you and your fitter find to be the best for you. So when you hit a few combinations and dial things in or whatever, and they say, hey, here's number one, here's number two, there's your best driver list. It's the only perfect one out there, the only way it'll ever be perfect. So no matter how much money, whatever you put into it, it just never will be perfect because everybody swings it different. So if you do a robot, if you do in person, whatever, it's all going to be one of those things. But what we do is we do this for one, to kind of, show that, these fitters are kind of in the trenches every day. These are the things that they're seeing go into customer bags. And then also, for when you go and go to your fitting, to have some drivers that you may see and kind of be prepared or whatever for what you're probably going to be handed when you're in the bay. So again, we know it's not perfect, and it never will be, and that's totally fine. So we're always looking at ways to revise it and all that, and so we always take those things into consideration when people give us feedback and whatnot. But but it's always a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of work. We truly, truly appreciate all the fitters who take the time to, fill out our surveys, talk to us, all that stuff. And they're very busy, especially this time of year. They're trying to get people fit, get people ready to go for this year, and everybody's trying to get their fittings and their orders in right now. So that way, when spring hits, they're rocking and rolling. Or if you live in the South, just get it to me as fast as possible and start playing. But up here in the North, if you're up here, you're definitely looking to play some golf soon. And the weather is starting to turn, at least here in kind of Detroit area. We're starting to see some sunnier, warmer weather. Today's a little chilly, but we're starting to see some nicer weather. So best driver list, again, it'll never be perfect, and whether you're a fan of robot testing or non-robot testing or person testing, whatever, there's always something. And it's funny because I've talked to people who say, well, this is how you should do it. You should do robot testing. And it's like, well, that's fine. Like, we've talked about that. We've discussed it and all that, but there's some flaws with robot testing. I mean, what do you use in terms of, are you testing drivers or driver heads? So some people say, well, I want the same shaft on every single club. Some people say no, it's, just as a stock, offering, this is what it should be, because it's a driver's complete thing, grip, shaft, head. Other people just want to know driver head. So you'll have the debate there. And then if you can get by that and say, okay, well, let's say we're going to go same shaft. Well, what shaft are you going to use? And are you going to use the same shaft for, like we break down, swing speeds over 106 miles an hour and over, 95 to 105, and then 94 and below. Like those are our kind of three categories. And then we have a fourth category that's straightest as well. But so then you go, okay, fine, we'll use the same shaft. Great, we use the same shaft. How do you determine what shaft is what? because the player at 106 miles an hour probably isn't playing a lot of the same shafts that the person who's swinging at under 94 miles an hour are playing. So are you going to have 3 different shafts? And if you are, how do you determine what those are? Do they have to be in the same family? Do they have to be like all Ventuses or all Tenseis or all, Project X or whatever? And then also, what do you do about length? Everybody's maybe a little bit different in terms of length. So do you make one length and that's it? And then you got to worry about, well, this thing's performing differently because it's at a different length than it's typically designed for. Or there's a thousand, and then what so when you look at what shaft, like what weight and flex, some people will say, well, at 105 maybe you're touching an extra stiff. We're at 95. Some people are sitting there saying, well, stiff, there could even be some stiffer regular flexes in there, tipped shafts or whatever. So then you got to figure out, okay, is it 6 stiff, 6x, 7x, whatever? What speed do you go at for these tests? If you're going to do a 95 to 105, do you just go at 100, middle of the road? Do you at the 106 over? What number is that? Is it 110? Is it 107? What's that number? And then same thing with 94 and below. Is it 94? Is it 90? Is it 85? So you got to kind of debate all that. And no matter what you choose, somebody's going to have a problem with it. And then again, like I said, depending on what shaft it is, do you do like a low launch, low spin shaft for the high swing speed player? Do you do a mid launch shaft? Do you do a high launch shaft? Like what are those things? And then even when you decide on profile, what model is it? Because some people will argue, certain shafts or whatever, certain shafts, they like or don't like or whatnot. So that's just getting into like figuring that part out. And then, it's the same thing, like at, driver swing speeds, are you going 9-degree heads? And then you go 10-degree heads in the kind of mid level. And then there's stuff too that crosses over. So you have drivers that cross over. So what do you do there? Like you're just going to go through and test test every head at 110 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, and 94 miles an hour, or 85 miles an hour, whatever the number is. Because then you start looking at, well, then it's a timing thing. Because how much time do you have to hit all these things? And then you can argue which launch monitor do you use. Are you a indoors GC quad? Are you outdoors a TrackMan? Are you indoors a TrackMan? Or using something else? There's a million different things that go into it, and almost anything you can think of a great test, there's some type of hole that can be put into it. So we do it this way, polling all these fitters, because these fitters see, even in the short window that they've had the heads until now, they have seen exponentially more shots than anybody else. So that's the way we go. That's why we do this, and that's the way we do it. So just to kind of give an explanation of why, and that's why we think it's it's kind of the best way for us, because we are showing off all these things that these fitters are doing. Because one fitter alone probably sees more shots than we could probably generate, across all these heads and all that. I mean, they see different swings, different deliveries, everything. So when they say, this is kind of my top choice or whatever for, the higher swing speed player, whatever, that stuff, I think it means something, because you typically are looking at somebody who's been watching a ton of shots, and he's seen a lot of things. So it's just that way. So we'll get into what the actual results are, and I'll give a few that were close, that were just outside the top 5, because for high speed, 106 and over, 95 to 105, under 94, we do a little bit. We have 5 drivers, so we put 5 in there. If you're really sneaky and look, there may be an order to them from left to right if you look in terms of what may have got the most votes, but we don't really put that out there. So anyway, we'll jump into the best driver. The best driver, we'll start with the high-speed one, because that's kind of the first one on the list. And the top 5, the ones that were the kind of highest winning, or the highest vote getters, were the Callaway Elite Triple Diamond, the Titleist GT3, Ping G440 LST, TaylorMade QI 35LS, and the Cobra DS Adapt LS. So all the low spin models, for the most part, I mean, Titleist, you can go GT3 or GT4 and go a little bit lower, but GT3 is typically considered the lower spin head out of the 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you just don't see a whole lot of 4s. You'll probably see more this year, but you just don't see a ton of 4s. So those are the most there. And realistically, I mean, they were all pretty close. I mean, when you look at the votes they got, they were all pretty similar. They all came in, pretty tight. There wasn't a huge jump between any one of them, which was pretty nice. There was a decent drop-off, though, between the top 5 and then, 6, 7, 8. There was a decent drop-off of votes there. So, but, I mean, out of these, I'm not super surprised really at any of them. When you say low spin or high speed players, typically high-speed players generate a lot of spin, so they're looking at the lower spin heads. But that's not always the case either. There's definitely players who bring a lot of speed, who are very efficient, hit up on the ball, and they don't generate a lot of spin. So these here are, yes, probably a lot of the ones you'll see, but you don't be shocked to see some, higher spinning, more forgiving heads in a fit if you're a high-speed player, because if you're somebody who's, low spin, you play more of a draw, things like that, you may not need one of these lower spin heads. So the interesting thing, talking just I did a lot of the interviews with the fitters, which is always awesome. I get a chance to talk to a lot of guys and get to kind of hear their thoughts on what they said about a lot of these drivers. And it was interesting. I mean, we'll start off first. I mean, the Elite Triple Diamond. A lot of people are liking the fact it's less hardcore than the Paradigm Triple Diamond, the AI Smoke Triple Diamond. They basically say it's a little more neutral bias. It's not as fade bias. It's a little bit more. It's got a little bit higher spin, but it's also a little bit more forgiving. Those two movable weights front to back, like they've been doing for a while in this head, they think adds a little bit of stability, especially in the back. But they overall say like between the face and the stability of the head, it's just more playable. And even players who are higher handicaps but still bring a lot of speed, which in this game, as we see some younger players coming in, we're seeing athletic people who are coming to play golf, and while their swing isn't there yet, or they don't have quite the game rounded off yet, and they're shooting higher scores, they still generate a lot of speed and they could generate a lot of spin. And this head, they're like, a lot of the fitters are just saying, like, this is very playable. I can put this into a player who is a higher handicap, maybe not a 20 or 30 or whatever, but I can move it. It's not for just the tour player, scratch player, or, single digit. I can move it in to the 10 to maybe 15 handicap player, and it's forgiving enough where they'll still get away with, straight shots while still having that spin reduction that they may need or that. So that was the big thing about Elite Triple Diamond this year that I heard from multiple people. There were a few people who thought it was a little more demanding than that, in their fits. They said, like, for them, it was a little more finicky and they really had to have the right player and the right swing to get it there, or to get it to perform the best out of anything. But like I said, majority of the people were very high praise on how much more playable. So, if you're somebody who, maybe you tried AI Smoke Triple Diamond last year, and it was one of those just kind of fade machines, tough to, hit, this could offer that little bit of forgiveness you need to make it a much better fit into your bag. GT3, it was interesting, always talking about when you start GT3. It came out at the end of last year, so it feels like it's been out for a while, but GT3 is kind of the same thing. Like, a lot of people are very high on, yes, it's low spin. Yes, it's, kind of player driven by the looks and all that, but it's actually a little bit more playable, a little bit more forgiving. Majority of people, or not majority, but a lot of the fitters kind of praised the ball speed of GT3 and even GT2, which we'll talk about later. But they just said, like, the ball speed on Titleist will match almost anything, and ball speed on mishits is phenomenal. That was a big talk of GT3, was how those mishits held so much ball speed. And while some other heads may have, like the one we'll talk about next, have a little better maybe spin consistency between center strikes and misses, the ball speed on GT3 was just really fast. And the other part, they love the fact that they have so much adjustability with the head. And that was kind of across the board a big thing with these fitters. Having more adjustments to put into a head makes their life, I wouldn't say easier, but it makes it more fun, makes it interesting. It enables them to really dial in heads to different players. But they love the fact that GT3, you've got Titleist adjustable hosel, which is phenomenal, ton of different options, can kind of independently do loft and lie, which not many drivers you can do. And then you look at the sole weight on the bottom, where you can adjust between 2 levels of fade, 2 levels of draw, and a neutral position. People were really, really big fans of GT3 going into this year, and it's still going to be a top contender amongst all the newer, even though it may be only a few months, the newer stuff that's come out. So the next one on the list, Ping G440 LST. So the LST, of course, is the low spin version of the Ping. The other thing, from talking to these guys, a lot of these fitters with Ping, it was so interesting to hear, like, the sound and feel, even compared to 430, is better. And a lot of their players who normally would not like a Ping, they don't like the sound, whatever, this has a great sound and feel. It's definitely more muted. I was actually hitting them today, and they are definitely the most muted, best sounding, kind of best feeling Ping drivers I think they've ever made. The new, the changing the acoustics, all that, has definitely made a huge impact. With these, I mean, it's paying. The changes are more incremental compared to other brands in terms of like they don't go wild and go crazy with stuff. Like they're going to make revisions that make the club a little bit better at every generation. And they were saying, is the LST the lowest spinning head? Maybe not the lowest spinning head, but it's pretty darn low. But it's super stable for a low spin head. It's probably one of the most forgiving lower spinning heads out there. And the big other thing that everybody was talking about was spin consistency. Like if you're a player who you hit it low heel, like that's just your spot. Like when you miss, you're low heel, and you tend to get that ball that kind of spins up in the air and kind of falls out short. Like that ball doesn't happen with the ping. They see definitely between center strikes, heel strikes, toe strikes. Those numbers don't vary much. They stay pretty tight. You'll lose a little bit of spin on toe miss. Toe, especially if you hit a little draw. But the same thing if you kind of heel fade it, you're not going to see that ball rise up and fall short as much. And that was a big thing across everybody. Was very impressed with how consistent and tight that spin window is across the whole face. No matter where you hit it there, it's going to be consistently spinning around the average that you're putting on it. And then everybody said, in terms of speed, that it may be a mile an hour too faster than 430. Nothing too crazy. But they say certain fits you're going to see maybe a mile an hour or two. Other fits, it's probably going to be about the same. But it depends. But they're saying maybe a hair more speed out of the G440 LST than the G430. So interesting head there. I was actually hitting it today. Really impressed by it. I think it is extremely stable, and it's just an easy head to hit. Number 4 in the high swing speed category, the 106 and above, was the TaylorMade QI35 LS, and I think a lot of players, it was funny, they talk about going from QI10 LS to 35 LS, and the big thing, much like the Callaway, was just how much more playable. They're like, this thing will fit such a wider range of player than QI10. QI10 was a super low spin kind of monster, and if you had that type of game or you needed that type of head, it was great. But for most players, it was too low spin, and it was a little bit too demanding in terms of you had to hit it in the center. The new one here, the QI35 LS, they said, with the new weight position, getting rid of the sliding track up front, putting the 3 movable weights on there, they're like, it is so much better. It isn't as crazy low spin. It's got a little higher spin rate to it than QI10, but it's not crazy fade bias. It's not crazy low spin. It produces great ball speed, and a lot of them said it produces better ball speed on misses than QI10. But they're saying the adjustability and the playability is massive on that thing. You can still make it, beast mode, super low spin, throw the big heavy weight up in the toe, and add a lighter weight in the back. You can still take off spin and make that thing kind of a monster for those players who need it. And then for players like myself, who actually I got kind of fitted to this out at TaylorMade's Kingdom, at the end of last year. Move the heavyweight back. You can make it kind of a forgiving, slightly higher launching driver that still has kind of low spin characteristics, but it definitely goes straight. So that was a big thing with everybody. Was this is a vast improvement over last year they thought for QI10 in terms of playability. They're going to get a lot more players into this head, kind of like the Callaway, where you're not going to have to be just a straight single digit to play it. You're going to be able to be a little above that and still get away with it because it's stable, it's straight enough, and it offers phenomenal ball speed. Everybody's saying it's super, super fast. The final one, the 5th one in the high speed category, is of course the Cobra DS Adapt LS, and Cobra's been doing some great things the past couple of years. But it was interesting. Everybody, the Cobra drivers that made it on here, everybody was super high on Cobra this year. And the first thing they said, ball speed. These things are ball speed monsters. It just creates a great amount of ball speed all over the face. But the second thing was how everybody is loving Future Fit 33. And I know when Future Fit 33 first got announced, it's Cobra's new hosel adapter. 33 adjustments are on there. I know we've talked about it before, but 33 different adjustment settings on the actual hosel. Most people said it was too much, it was too overkill. How would a fitter ever find your right one? Every fitter out there was like, this thing is awesome. I love the fact that I can independently adjust loft and lie. So if I have a player who needs to kind of go up and loft, but we don't want to make the head upright, all that, they can do that. And the same thing if they just want, hey, we got enough, we have enough loft on there, but we want to go a little bit flat, you can do that as well. And a lot of them mentioned about, instead of just having one shot, like, it's like you have 1 degree up, 1 degree down, whatever. You have these in between kind of settings. So you have like the outside ring that has, all the settings for if you want to hit it higher, higher and left. But then they have like a smaller setting that has just a smaller adjustment. So you kind of have something in between. And he's like, those actually come into play so much more than you would think. Because, yeah, you have some players that you can just fine tune, that setting. He's like, now, a lot of the players, who are higher handicaps, yes, you're going to use the outside ring, the bigger changes. But for those better players, some of them just need a little bit of adjustment there. Maybe, that 0.7 degrees of loft, or that just slight change in lie, and those things make a big difference for those players. So that was the big thing. The other thing, much like the other, a lot of fitters talking about how DS Adapt LS is, again, more forgiving than the last one. It's still in the low lofts, gnarly low spin if you want it. You can set it up with heavy weights forward and make it kind of like as nasty as you want it to be. But on the flip side, you can move weight back and make this thing, get some higher lofts, make this thing really, really playable. And like I said, they raved about ball speed. Said ball speed on the LS, phenomenal. Spin control. Some people said it was probably the lowest spinning driver they had in their arsenal this year. But other people said that, they didn't feel it was that low spin. And, depending on the setup, you could make it pretty low spin. But that. So those are the 5 for the high-speed player. Callaway Elite Triple Diamond, Titleist GT3, Ping G440 LST, TaylorMade QI35 LS, and Cobra DS Adapt LS. So those are the big ones there. Those are the for the higher swing speed player. There's typically something that might fit you better. Would be one of these models, but of course you never know until you go hit them. Go work with your fitter. You just don't know. So then we move into the driver swing speeds for 95 to 105. We'll call it mid, just to make it easier instead of having to say 95 to 105 every single time. But we'll say kind of like the mid driver speed. And that one there, again, we have, kind of, I think, what you think, maybe 1 or 2 that are slightly different. But it starts off with Titleist GT2. And GT2, as everybody said, I mean, the ball speed on Titleist products has been absolutely phenomenal. GT stuff will hang with anything in terms of ball speed, whether it's a dead center shot, whether it's a miss. They just produce really good ball speed, and there's nothing out there really that walks away from those guys. I mean, that's the big thing. With GT2, a lot of the fitters, they just like the fact that it's a combination of stability and speed. Like a lot of times you kind of sacrifice a little of one to get another. If you want a super forgiving head, like typically 10K heads are not the fastest heads in terms of ball speed, but the GT2 is one of those that you get both. You get ball speed and you get forgiveness and stability. And it's just one of those drivers that, while it made it here on, on the mid level, it was kind of like the number one in a sense. It was the 6th choice basically in the high speed category. And a lot of these fitters just talked about how versatile it is. You can have a player who's super fast, super high speed. Like, I mean, out on tour, there's guys who play GT2, and you'll have a person who is, a higher handicap, 15 plus, whatever. GT2 could work. And it's just all around really versatile. It's not crazy low spin, but it's not a high spin driver. The spin consistency is pretty good between miss hits and centers. And it's just overall really straight. It goes really straight. A lot of people said, they found it to be extremely neutral. Me personally, I think it has a little more draw to it than TSR2. I think it's a little easier to turn over. A few guys agreed with me, or they said that same, similar thing. But other people kind of commented on how it was a neutral flight, and you could kind of adjust a little bit with the hosel settings on if you wanted that thing to be a little bit easier to turn over, a little bit more fade bias or neutral. But you could do that. But ball speed was the big thing with GT2 and everybody. That, and of course, looks. He's like, everybody there goes, you could hand a player a Titleist driver, no one will ever hand it back to you that they don't like the look of it or the sound of it or the feel of it. Like, it just wins every time in those categories. You never have to worry about that. But ball speed and stability were the big thing with GT2 and why it kind of fit in this, mid swing speed kind of category. But it fit across pretty much everything. Everybody had, good things to say about it. Next one on the list would be the Callaway Elite. So this would be the standard Elite. And, again, this comes down to kind of what we said about the GT3 and the high speed is adjustability. That was like kind of the big rave between the rear weight ports that you have. So you have 3 combination of fade, neutral, draw. You've got a forward weight that can, you could alter to alter the spin characteristics and stuff for the head. And then, you go to the hosel settings. So you've got a lot of adjustability, and people like the fact that not only did you get a bigger, stable head that went really straight, but you had that adjustability to really dial it in, and you can make some changes on here to make this driver fit some players that, maybe previously you couldn't do with other heads. So that was the big thing about Elite. Everybody, of course, raved, the AI smart face. It was said by name a handful of times by different people. And they're like, with those, micro deflection spots, whatever, it's somehow working because it definitely does tighten up dispersion a little bit. People said it's a little more accurate, a little straighter. than AI Smoke, the standard Paradigm AI Smoke models. So definitely something that people love the ball speed, they love the stability and the straightness of it, and then you throw in the adjustability. And the same thing, that one, a lot of people said you're going to fit a wide range. Like that one could easily be in somebody who swings it faster, easily be in somebody who swings it slower. It's just really adjustable and really easy to hit and dial in. Next one on the list would be the Ping G440 Max driver. So the LST and the low spin, low spin for the high speed player, more average player, the Max goes in there. And, kind of like the LST, sound and feel was one of the biggest things. People were talking about how players are actually really enjoying the sound and the feel of a Ping product. With the Max, they said, the stability, all that, while it's not technically the 10K model, it is really close, it is really straight, and it is just an easy driver to hit. They're like, you're going to see low handicap players who play this thing because it's just easy to hit, and you're going to see higher handicap players who play a couple times a month, and that's it, because it is just straight. It goes straight. It's ultra stable. You hit it off the toe, you have the heel. There's just the ball goes straight. Again, like G430 compared to G440 Max, the big thing, maybe a mile an hour to ball speed extra. You're not going to get anything crazy. It's nothing really wild. But the same with this, with like LST, a lot of the fitters, the spin consistency between it, those mishits to center strikes, that spin number stays really consistent. And that was kind of some of the focus on 440 Max from a lot of fitters, between sound feel, spin consistency, and seeing maybe a little bit of ball speed increase. People are really a big fan of the Max, and it is, for some of the people, they said it's like their number one selling driver so far this year, which is still early. That could definitely change. But there were two fitters at least that I remember talking to that said like this is the number one selling driver overall in terms of like single, compared to like a GT2 or a GT3 or a Elite or an Elite Max, like the single model one. They said that was kind of the biggest sales for them this year so far. But really solid. I hit it today. I was really impressed with how straight it was. And honestly, it didn't spin as high as I thought. The spin difference between LST and Max for me was very, very minimal. So interesting head, but very, very good, very consistent. And I think the first two drives I hit were almost identical in carry. I want to say they were like, what is it like? It was like 242.2, and they were both the exact same or something like that. It was crazy. Like they were identical. So very consistent driver. And then the one that's kind of got the most kind of controversy about it in terms of people seeing the list and arguing a little bit about it, the TaylorMade QI35, the standard core model. A lot of people said like they've been seeing that more in the high speed fits. And when you look at, in terms of the voting and you look at where that one placed, it was pretty close up there. I think it was just by the GT2. So the ones just missing out in terms of where they scored, GT2 and then QI35. So those are the two that are in the kind of mid clubhead speed. They didn't quite make it at the high speed, but they were the next ones there. And a lot of people are just saying QI35 is really good for high speed players. For the mid speed player, again, this comes down to it is just a little bit lower spinning, a little bit lower launching, and a little bit more adjustable than the QI10. QI10 for some players just spun a lot, and it kind of launched kind of high. Had to have kind of the right person in it. It kind of had a smaller, range of players it would fit in terms of swing type and ball, launch conditions. QI35, way, way more. People say, adding the two movable weights, one in back, one in front, and being able to kind of push a heavy weight forward and turn it into kind of a low spin thing with some forgiveness, or shoving all the weight back and make it super forgiving, high launching with a little bit of spin. They're like, you can kind of dial this thing in to different players, and then you throw in the adjustable hosel, and you're able to really kind of fit it. And they were saying, people are really impressed with that driver and seeing far more early on fits with that compared to the standard QI10 from last year. So QI35, big on the adjustability. Everybody's liking those two movable weights in the core model because they're like, you can make a low spin head that isn't unforgiving. You can kind of move that weight forward, make a low spin, but you're still having an easy to hit driver that still keeps the forgiveness that's there. And then it was interesting. Everybody, it was like 50-50 who I talked to. 50% of people loved the new, gray carbon on it, and 50% wanted the old black from the QI10, like simple, clean look. Really, really split. And it was funny because I talked to one fitter, and then I had a day where I had I don't know how many fitting interviews in a row, and it was like the next guy. The first guy was like, "Yeah, I love the gray. I love the new carbon. The look looks great." And then the next person was like, "Don't really like the gray. Wish they would have kept the black." It was like perfect that they were split on it, but it was split like 50-50 on that. Then the final one for the mid swing speed was the Cobra DS Adapt X. And this one here, much like LS, Future Fit 33 was massive. People loved being able to do that there. A lot of people said, like this one here, the lower lofts were really, really good for the high speed player because there's more mass kind of pushed up front. And then you get to like the 9-degree head and the 10-5 head, they move some of that weight back internally, so it's not even adjustable. But they love the fact that like this thing is just all about speed. Ball speed's huge. No matter where you hit on the face, you're going to get great ball speed numbers. It's rarely beat out by anything in that category. They love, again, kind of like QI35. They like the fact that the Adapt X has 2 movable weights, so you can move one forward, take a little spin off, move one back, to add a little spin, add a little forgiveness. So there's some adjustability there that they like, and then of course 33 hosel adjustments, you can really dial it in. But the sound and feel improved over last year's X, a little more muted, not near as loud, and the shaping overall people really, really like. So in terms of look, sound, feel, it's definitely an easier sell than last year's X to a lot of these fitters, but the added adjustability in this head is what really does it for them. That and just a ton of ball speed. But they say this thing has a wide range. You're going to see people with really high club head speeds be able to make this work, and you're going to be able to see players who don't have very high club head speed work in this same head because it's fast and it's pretty darn forgiving. Like it's pretty stable. It does it all well. It's just like great ball speed, does everything else really well. So the Cobra DS Adapt X. So that is the mid-level one, or the mid-swing speed, 95 to 105. So GT2 from Titleist, Callaway Elite, Ping G440 Max, TaylorMade QI35, and the Cobra DS Adapt X. So the final category is best driver is 94 and below. So the slightly more average, slower to average club head speed. I think the average club head speed is around like 88 miles an hour or something like that. If you talk to like OEMs, all the research they do, like I think it's like 90 miles an hour or under. So this is kind of fits into that category of most players. But this one here, again, there's a lot of players who, there's some drivers here that definitely make it on the other, other ends. But we'll start off this one, and the first one there, Ping G440 Max. As we talked about before, great stability, easy to hit, it launches high, and it's, not crazy high spin, but it's got a little bit of spin. And for the slower club head speed player, they say Ping, adding just a little bit of ball speed definitely helps, gets a few more yards out of people, but it's easy to launch, it launches high, and then you can go mess with some of the settings. It's got the weight that you can make it draw neutral fade. So, it's got a lot of adjustment there, but launching high, having just a little bit of spin and being very stable, it typically works really, really well. And again, much like the LST and talking about the Max 4, sound and feel is big. Everybody kept mentioning that. I don't think any fitter didn't mention sound and feel when it came to the G440s, and whether the Max or the LST, everybody was raving about it. So then we move to the second place, and it is the TaylorMade QI35 Max. So this one here was actually kind of coined from a lot of the fitters, the biggest jump, the biggest improvement from year-to-year model out of anything. So last year's QI10 Max was a great driver, 10K, all that, but it launched high and it spun a ton. And there was a lot of players who just couldn't play it because they couldn't get that stuff down. QI35 Max, the biggest thing is people say it is definitely improved there. It's got better ball speed. It's got better, the stability is still there, but it's got better spin, better launch numbers. It launches a little flatter, spins a little bit less, but while still retaining all that stability that those players want. But it still launches high. It still spins a little bit, out of everything else in the QI35 line. It's still going to spin a little bit more. But they said this thing here is just massively better. You're not just getting stability. You can get some, you're going to get the distance back here. You're getting a good sound and feel. And overall, it's just really, really vastly improved over last year's QI10. So it was pretty cool to hear that because I'd hit that driver and I thought it actually performed really well. I myself thought it was a pretty big improvement over last year's, but every fitter out there was kind of saying, if they had to pick one driver that was like the biggest jump from model to model, that was it. And it just it performs so much better. You don't have to kind of worry about it being really kind of pigeonholed to that certain player who needs it. You're going to be able to put it in a few different fits, a few different scenarios, and it's still going to work out every time. So ultra straight, very, very stable, and it's back there again and vastly, vastly improved. So We go from QI35 Max to the next model. There is going to be GT2. So Titleist GT2 back again. So it was at the the mid swing speed and the low swing speed both. And like I said, I mean, you could talk to a lot of fitters, and they said that things that works in the high swing speed. It is just kind of, it fits everywhere. It works really well everywhere. Whether you got a tour swing, whether you got an 85-mile-an-hour average swing, whatever it is, the thing just works. As we said before, tons of ball speed. Great stability, just go straight. It's not super high spin. Spin consistency is pretty good, but overall, thing just works really well. And a lot of people super impressed with how that fits across the board. I feel like that thing, like I said, it came in sixth place basically in terms of votes for high speed. So it could have been in all three, and I don't think anybody would have been shocked because you've seen this thing all over the place. And so GT2 turned out to be a real big one for people, and they're really excited going forward. They think it's going to compete with everything that's out new, that's shiny and new. The GT2 is still going to be there. Now the next one there, the fourth driver in the list, is the sibling to the GT2. It is the GT1 from Titleist. So this one hasn't actually been out that long, which is to me kind of surprising. I didn't think this one was going to make the list, only because it hadn't been out that long. It just got released a little bit ago, and a lot of fitters said, like, yes, it has not been out that long, but it has done really well in their bays. They really like, for that more average club head speed player, you can make this head super light and make it fast, easy to swing, easy to turn over, launch high, spin high, do all that. But then if you have a player who's maybe just a little bit faster than that, maybe they're on the high end of this 94 miles an hour, you can add a little bit more weight, make it a little more traditional because it's got the adjustable weights in it. Add a little bit of weight, make it a little bit more of a traditional driver in terms of weight and feel, and you're still going to get great ball speed, plenty of launch, and a lot of forgiveness. They do say it is a little easier. It's probably the easiest one to turn over out of everything, even though it's not labeled draw or anything. It definitely is the easiest one to turn over. And of course, with the hosel, you can adjust it and make some things kind of happen there. But overall, fitters really impressed with this thing, as even though they've only had it a short time, so it's been extremely successful for a lot of players. And I think GT1 overall, I mean, you look at like the rest of the line of it, between hybrids and fairways, it just really does, it's just more versatile. It has the ability to be in way more many bags than it did, in the previous generations, where it was kind of the one-trick pony, super lightweight, super thin face, went far, but you had to have that slower club head speed. Now, I think, we've seen a couple of these out on tour even. I think, I don't remember who it was, but a couple of fairways, a couple drivers, all that, between LPGA and PGA. There's some out there. So you're going to see, again, a wider range, and just adding some adjustability is a big deal with the GT1. The final one in this is the DS Adapt Max K. So the 10K version from Cobra. And again, ton of raving reviews about this thing when talking to fitters. And the big thing was, usually 10K drivers are slow. You usually don't see a ton of ball speed. Club head speed doesn't go up. Like everything about them, they're just a little bit slow. And they're like, the Max K is, again, just like its siblings elsewhere in the Cobra lineup, it is a ball speed machine. It creates great ball speed while still giving that stability that you want on the 10K head. People said they love the looks of it, the shaping, all that. It's just kind of like a traditional Cobra driver with the carbon crown, matte black, kind of looks mean. The sound and feel on it, it's good. But again, between 10K head and the Future Fit 33 adjustment, while it may not have movable weights to kind of move around, having that 10K stability with the Cobra's ball speed and that adjustment, you're going to be able to get this thing into a ton of players' bags. And people are saying, like, high speed players, who don't, they're not necessarily looking for a spin reduction, but they need that accuracy, they need that stability because they hit it right, left, up and down. This thing here just goes straight, and they're able to find players who hit it straight, hit it consistent, and it just makes them hit more fairways while not having to say, well, you're giving something up here. You're giving up a little ball speed. You're giving up something. You're adding spin, whatever. They said it doesn't spin super high, and it gets up in the air really easily, but it goes super straight. And again, having those minor adjustments in the hosel to be able to kind of flight it down, up, flat, upright, more loft, less loft. You can really take, a single head and, dial it in for a player and make sure that it really works. So, the Max K was definitely, I'm actually kind of surprised it's kind of the fifth on the list there. I thought it was going to be higher the way everybody was talking about it. But it didn't quite make it there, but it's still on the list there, the top five. And then, the ones that just missed the cut. I mean, we'll go there. I mean, like I kind of mentioned, with the higher speed, the 106 and above, The two that missed, GT2 and QI35. Those are the two just outside. And then the third was the ZXi LS from Strixon. So heard a lot of really good things about Strixon from a bunch of different fitters who mentioned it, because we kind of always, talk about stuff that just misses. And ZXi, now LS wasn't talked about as much, even though it got a ton of votes. The Max one got was really high on. People are like, that thing is really, really close to being absolutely phenomenal. So the Max is a big one there, and but those are the two, GT2, QI35 standard, and ZXi LS were right outside the high speed players. So not too surprising there. The Elite was just out there. There was the Wilson, the Dynapower LS was up there pretty close. It just missed out there. And then we look at the mid club head speed, the 95 to 105. Basically, the QI35 Max was the first man out on that one there. And then the Cobra's Max K was the next one, followed by the G430 10K. So the three drivers in the 95 to 105 club head speed, the three drivers that were next in line and just kind of missed out on the top were all 10K drivers. QI35 Max, Cobra DS Adapt Max K, and the Ping G430 Max K. Now the 430 Max K ended up winning in the straightest. We had one that came out a little later, the list that was just straightest, kind of more forgiving, and the 430 10K was in that. But then after that, the ZXi from Strixon was right there. So I think Strixon is really, really close. I think they are doing some things, and people are starting to notice. So we'll see kind of how that goes. But their driver has been really, really good. A lot of good things said about it. When we look at the 94 and unders club head speed, the ones that just missed, Callaway Elite X was the first one out, and then Callaway Elite Max Fast was the next, and then Ping G430 Max 10K. So those are the three that just missed out. I've actually personally hit the Elite X, and it's funny. I took it down to, I hit it in the Bay, really liked it, hit it really well. Took it down to Florida like 2 weeks ago and played it and hit it exceptionally well. Up until 17 or 18, when the wheels kind of fell off a little bit, I hit that driver exceptionally well all day. So the Elite X is definitely a solid option. But two Callaways and a Ping miss out on the lower club head speed side, but really, really close there as well. When you start looking at the numbers, that was probably the closest in terms of votes on that one. But it was a good round this year. So those are best drivers of 2025. I know there's not technically like a one winner, like this is the one, because there's really not one driver that's the best. You have to go fit it, because what I'm going to swing the best, what you're going to swing the best are just going to be different. But this is a cool, it's always a fun thing. I love talking to a lot of these fitters and kind of getting their insight. Like I said, and then you hear little things like, well, the Strixon driver, and whatever, and you kind of hear what's kind of just creeping out, looking in on the outside. And there's some stuff, like I said, like Strixon has done really well. And people, with Wilson, it's kind of surprising to see Wilson get as many votes as they did, because realistically, Wilson hasn't been out that long. Like their driver is probably one of the last to market, and to see it actually get a decent amount of votes everywhere was pretty surprising, because I didn't think it'd do that well, just because people didn't have it very long, and it definitely did better than I thought. So very cool to see them there. Like I said, Strixon, to see them kind of pushing it, and Mizuno stuff, got some decent votes as well. So a lot of drivers that you may not. That may not have made the list, but are still really, really good. They still get into a lot of fits. So it's, that is the best driver of 2025. You can go kind of read all the stuff, see some of the interviews and stuff right on GolfWRX.com. Go on to the front page. Best drivers right there. And like I said, you can actually see some of the interviews. We took a bunch of clips, put them together for a handful of the drivers, and just talked to, recorded with a few fitters. So that was pretty cool. So that is best driver of 2025. So it was a whole lot of fun. I got to help the whole team. I'm very, happy and proud of the team that we all put this together. And hopefully you guys can go take a look and, like it, love it, hate it, whatever, go into the forum, leave some feedback. There's a big thing there. I've been chatting with a few people in there about what we did and how we did it and all that. And some people said, hey, it's great. Hey, it stinks. And people have said, hey, it'd be cool if you could do this or that or whatever. So we always take those things into consideration. We always have a lot of internal meetings over that kind of stuff. So that is best driver of 2025. So that's all I've got today. Next week, I'm going to have a regular show with some stuff. I've been hitting the new Mira TC202s. I hit those today. Really, really good. I hit the new ping, hit all the new ping stuff again today. So got another round in with those. And then also check out, if you check out my Instagram, at Club Junkie Pod, check out the new Mizuno build I did. It's probably the wildest set of JPX 925 forged you'll ever see. So anyway, hopefully you guys have a good week. We'll talk next week. And yeah, that's all I've got.